What up, brawlers? Welcome back to yet another episode of Throwin Hands. As Breck and I will review UFC 259. Breck, what were your thoughts on the night overall?
It was a really great card that lived up to the hype, in my opinion. And some of the fights weren't as great as expected. I look at like the Rakic Santos fight, but besides that, most of the prelims delivered. The prelims could have been like a fight night card. They were that good on paper,
Yeah,
and a lot of the fights ended, TKOs or knockouts. So I thought it was a really good night for the UFC overall.
yeah, it definitely was. One thing I want to mention about the early prelims, Uros Medic, dude's gonna be a problem. I'm just gonna put that out there. So that's what I got. I mean, he finished a long Cruz real quick, and the fight should have been stopped earlier. Landed 55 to Cruz's 0 strikes. So also watch out for Lemos. But we're going to talk about one fight on the prelims. It was Kennedy and Sheku versus Carlos Olberg. Carlos Olberg, highly touted prospect of city kickboxing, and then Sheku just was losing pretty much the whole fight until he knocked out Olberg. I know you didn't watch too much of this, Breck, but do you have any like small thoughts on this one?
Yeah, this is one of the ones I caught, and yeah, like you said, Olberg was like really outstriking him in every department with like leg kicks. Like he looked a little the faster man, but you wonder, if he gassed himself out, and this guy Kennedy, that's a tough one.
And Sheku.
In Chekwu, he's got like a granite chin, and you could just see towards the end of the second, Carlos Olberg, if you look at their hand placement, like in Cheku's hands were up and Olberg's hands were like way down, like he had no guard whatsoever. And, just one shot, it was all it took for him to get knocked out because he was winning most of the fight.
Yeah. Very impressive performance by Nshekwu. I think Olberg will be back better. He's a great prospect, hell of an athlete. And then, but Nshekwu, woof, man. All right, to the first bout of the prelims. Hajeria Bontoren versus Kayakara France. Kayakara France was losing basically the whole first round until he knocked out Hajeria Bontoren. Impressive knockout. Weird stoppage. Herb Dean did stop it, I believe. I don't get why people are all over Herb Dean about that. I thought it was a pretty clear stoppage because he pulled France away from Bontoren. But it was this was a win Kayakara France needed. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, coming off the loss in his last fight on Fight Island, Kayakara France needed this one. And like you said, he probably was down in the round due to that takedown, and the strikes were pretty close, but he looked the faster man, and I mean that's how it basically ended. Was Bontoren was loading up on some shots, and Kayakara Francis caught him with some quick 1-2, and then threw an uppercut that eventually finished it. And yeah, I kind of agree with you. Herb Dean like stopped it. I don't know why Kayakara Francis like came back in for the kill. It didn't make much sense to me in that situation. Like, did you understand why he ran back? Because to me, it looked like Herb stopped it.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so for Hajer Bontoren, I don't really know what's next for him. I don't think it's tough, but I think he has to wait for some things to I think Tim Elliott would be a great fight for Bontoren to get back into it. What do you think?
Yeah, that'd be a good one. Any of those, 10 through 15 guys would be a good matchup. But for Kayakara France, I don't know how you feel, but I feel like a step up in competition would be good. One of those 5 through 7 spots would be a good fight for him.
Yeah, I think so too. It's interesting. Like when he gets to that 5 through 7 spot, he loses. So we'll see if he can turn it around. I mean, City Kickboxing will help him out with that. All right, look out for Askarov. Look out for Kyler Phillips. Just letting you know.
Yeah. One thing on that Askarov, it's sad to see Joey B. Just, I don't know if those Figueiredo fights may have just taken the career, like shortened the, you know what I mean? Like he just doesn't look the same. Doesn't look the same with the amount of punishment he took in those 2 fights.
I mean, I think he's up there when it comes to some of the best fighters to never win a belt.
Definitely,
in my opinion. All right. Dominic Cruz versus Casey Kenny. Casey Kenny, he's come on Throwin Hands. Fun fact, great. He's an interesting character. And then we got Dominic Cruz, who looked good in this fight. I think I don't think he'll get back to that championship caliber, but it proves that his style still works, even if he's 35 or 36 or however old he is. Yeah, outstruck Casey Kenny significantly. I think great performance with Dominic Cruz, and it'll get him back into the mix a little bit. And Casey Kenny, I think he proved that he's a great contender in this division. What were your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, Dominic Cruz definitely looked in great shape coming into the fight, and it definitely showed in his hand speed and his quickness. His awkward movement was on point, and Kenny had a problem. They said, like, the commentary team said, like, you could prepare for the weird footwork of Cruz, but once you get in there, it's a different thing, and that proved to be true because Kenny was always a step behind, and the strikes were like close at, like, after two, but or after one and a half, and then Dominic Cruz just poured it on, and then those two takedown attempts are really what secured Cruz the fight, because without those, I think it could be like a draw without the takedown attempts, because those takedowns were huge, especially in the third for Cruz.
Definitely, and I don't get how one judge gave all 3 rounds to Casey Kenny.
That was odd. I didn't understand that one. I don't think. I mean, you could. I thought it was 1-1 going into the third. I don't know how you scored it, but
yeah, that's what I had it.
And then I thought Cruz won the third. So, like, giving him all 3 made no sense to me.
Yeah, if we look at the stats by round, the second round was really close, and you could argue either one won. It felt like Casey Kenny had some more control over the octagon in the second round.
Mm-hmm.
But when we go to the third, I mean, Cruz won the first. So
yeah, like giving Kenny the third was a little crazy too, in my opinion, because if you just looked at Kenny's body language, like, he was gassing out trying to hit Cruz, like he was getting really tired there.
Yeah. So for what's next, for Casey Kenny, I think he's going to be a good contender in this division. I think he deserves another. I think Cheeto Vera would be a good fight to make for him. I think I'd like to see that. What do you think, Breck?
Cheeto Vera would be a really good fight. Cody Stamen would be a really good fight. Merab Dariush would be a good fight. Any of those guys would be a good step up. I think he's of the level, like, he showed really well against Dominic Cruz, former champion, so he could definitely fight well against a 12-15 opponent in his next fight. But Dominic Cruz, it's interesting to see. I know I like the whole, like, the calling out the monster energy thing. CEO was a little weird, which I guess
we got to find a commission to sanction it.
Yeah, I don't think that's gonna happen, because the UFC would just be like, no. But it should be interesting to see who Cruz fights in his, in his next fight.
I say Aldo.
Maybe Aldo. I look at, like, Marlon Moraes or Frankie Edgar. Those would be some good fights, I think.
Yeah, those would be good fights. I think Frankie Edgar would be good. I think when it comes to selling tickets or whatnot.
Yeah, that'd be a big name fight. Yeah.
And Jose Aldo. I mean, that's 2 WEC legends going at it.
It would be, but I wonder if Aldo's gonna fight, Rob Font or Garbrandt next.
Yeah, that's true. All right, to the first bout of the main card, Thiago Santos versus Alexander Rakic. Rakic coming away with the decision in this one. I agree with the decision personally. But I mean, he got outstruck. But from the eye test, I feel like he did win this decision. But this was supposed to be a banger, but I think they respected each other's power a little bit too much, and I think that's what led to kind of the lackluster fight. What do you have to say?
Yeah, I agree. It's like, I just wish one of them would have just thrown himself in there a little bit more. And it's hard to say that because, you have the threat of getting knocked out with, at every moment. But I think Rakic could have taken a little more bit of, risks, and I think he would have been okay. You know what I mean? Like, seems to have a great chin. He's like in unbelievable shape, and he did get outstruck. But yeah, like you said, the eye test, like, the whole fight, it seemed like Santos was just standing still, like, behind. It was just very. It was probably the most disappointing fight, in my opinion. The whole, like you said, coming in, it was like, this is gonna be awesome. and it didn't deliver the same way. Nothing on the ground, which was interesting, considering how after the fight Rakic's coach gave him a brown belt, even though there was literally nothing on the ground.
And then he judo threw him.
And then he judo threw him. That was pretty funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you said, there's just it was interesting. I still, both these guys, I think Rakic with the win goes up in the standings, but Santos still is, he's still got it. I know he's older, but
Yeah.
he's on a 2-fight skid, but I mean, in the
3.
fight against 3. The fight against Glover, I mean, he dropped Glover a couple times, like 3 times, and Glover just kept getting up because Glover's just built different. Like
He comes from the shadow realm each time.
Yeah, every time he's just like Glover's like dead man walking, comes back, submits it, But it's interesting. It's just you wonder if Santos is going to be one of those like gatekeeper types where now he fights all the young prospects.
Yeah, I mean, I hope not. He's a great fighter. All right, what's next? I think the Thiago Santos should get the winner of Jimmy Crute and Anthony Smith. What do you think?
That's a really, really good call. You could argue Jin Projak.
Yeah.
Another young, good prospect. I see him and Rakic fighting one day.
Yeah, Yuri Prochazka. Yeah,
day.
that'd be great.
That'd be like a really good, fight of some young guys. But yeah, like you said, I think Santos needs to fight a little bit down in competition in terms of the division. Like
he's gonna win
5 through 10. I think he'll get another. Yeah, he needs to win. I think he would get another win. But that's a really good call, Crute versus Smith, which is another interesting matchup in its own right.
Yeah, that's coming in April, I think, and then I think Rakic gets the winner of Reyes and Prochazka. So, yeah, dude, this light heavyweight division is gonna be great.
People were like, "What's John left?" So, like, what's happening with the division? But a lot of young names coming up, and it's starting to take form. It's starting to get really good.
Yeah, for sure. All right.
Shout out Paul Craig. Love Paul Craig.
Yeah, shout out Paul Craig. All right. This was pure domination on Islam Makhachev's part. He's built different. I don't think there's a better way to describe it than built different. He's so strong. His wrestling is amazing. The pressure that he put on Drew Dober. And Drew Dober's a very good fighter. Unbelievable. I think he'll be the champ within the next 2 years. What do you have to say?
I agree with that. I think a lot of hype going into the fight, especially from, DC's AKA teammate. And he said something before the fight, which people were like, come on, no. But like you watch this fight and how could you argue? Like DC said, if it was a straight wrestling match, he thinks Makhachev could beat Khabib in a straight wrestling match. And people were like, that's crazy. But like you watch the fight and you're like, maybe he could, bro, because his wrestling is insane. Like he does what Khabib does to people just in the center of the octagon. You know what I mean? You know how Khabib takes him to the corners and gets him up against the fence and uses the fence to his advantage? I mean, he did it in the middle of the octagon. And Drew Dober, like, tried to stay on his feet, but then would just get, caught in the middle. And then when you get caught in the middle like that, it's like you're drowning. Like, he was just stuck in the middle, couldn't go anywhere. And then you're right, like, the strength and the pressure that he put on. I mean, dude, that arm triangle choke was so strong. I mean, most guys can't squeeze that tight to get a submission out of that position. And it was like 10 seconds. It was done. Yeah, like you said, this was just a ragdolling. And I think Makhachev's got to fight. Like he called out Tony Ferguson after. That would be a really good fight. He's got to fight like a top 5. I think he's on the level of a top 5 guy.
Yeah, and let's talk about Drew Dober real quick. Screw it, give him Uros Medic. That's the fight I want to see. I think Uros Medic from the prelims is super duper good. I think that's the fight to make. But when we talk about Makhachev, I think Tony's the fight to make. I want to see CSO Tony. Let's go. But I think that has to be the fight to make.
It does, especially with all the Khabib beef in the past. Like, it's not really fighting Khabib, but it's like fighting, Khabib's closest guy. Mm-hmm. So it makes a lot of sense. another opponent, Rafael dos Anjos, that fight was supposed to happen, remember, and then it fell through.
Yeah.
So that would make sense too if the Tony didn't work out. So those are two of the fights that just have to happen. Like he has to fight one of those two guys. And then like you said, for Drew Dober, that's a good call. And then maybe if Gregor Gillespie gets a win in his next fight, one of
Yeah.
those lower guys in the division he could fight. Because Drew Dober, like you said, he's like a really great striker. And what Islam did to him made him look, average.
Yeah.
And, even though it wasn't on the feet much to fight, Islam looked good on the feet too. So
Yeah.
it's really interesting. But like you said, Islam's got to fight either Tony or RDA.
The real question is, where does Kevin Lee fit into this?
That's a good question. No, the real question is where does, Ali Quinta fall into this? Because, top 10 houses sold by Ali Quinta.
Hasn't come yet. Hasn't come yet.
Sad. But we, us in the community, we've been waiting so long for that video, top 10 houses that Ali Quinta sold.
Speaking of Ali Quinta and Sarah Longo, Breck, take it away. Petr Yan, Aljamain Sterling.
Well, this is obviously the fight everybody was talking about the night of and still talking about. I was pulling for my Long Island guy, my brethren, Long Island represent, Aljamain Sterling. And I think he was, we'll get to the fourth round where all the controversy happened, but I don't know how you scored it going into the fourth. I had it 2-1 Yan. I thought Sterling
I did too.
First with all the pressure, and he kept, landing punches through Yan's guard. And then the second and third, he just kept that insane pace up, trying all those takedowns, and Yan either stuffed him or leg sweeped him to the ground, or he would just lay and try to, draw him to the ground. But Yan was smart and didn't go to the ground. He just kept kicking him or letting him back up. So going into the fourth, I think it was 2-1 Yan, and I think I was starting to fear for Sterling. I don't know how you felt. Like he was getting really
bad.
Tired. He was getting really tired, and the strikes for Yan were picking up. Like he, plans in most of his fight. He usually pours it on you in the fourth and fifth. And I think we would have seen like a late fourth round, mid fifth round knockout from Yan if it had kept going at that pace. Because Sterling, even though in unbelievable shape, like they talked about on the commentary, like the only reason he was able to keep that pace up was because of how good a shape he was in. But yeah, we'll get to the knee, and it was another one of those scenarios where Sterling was so tired from 17 takedown attempts. It was like he goes to a knee, and then Yan grabs his arms, and then there was the whole one guy in the corner said just punch, and the other guy said through Khabib sitting cage side, who translated from Russian, like throw the knee or kick him. So
Petr Yan asked, "Can I kick him?" And then his corner, his guy from ATT said,
"Punch
him." And then his Russian guy, his Russian comrade, said, "Yes." And then Yan just kneed him in the face.
So it seemed to be a little breakdown of communication. I think if you're Yan, you have to like change your corner after that. I don't know how. You know what I mean? Like, how do you go back into another title fight with?
Yeah, and I think like you can. I don't think you should have that guy in his corner ever again.
No.
But like you've heard Petr Yan speak English, it's not great. And I think if you hear a guy in your native tongue say yes, I think you'd favor that over the guy who's speaking English.
Yes, I agree. But the guy from ATT was definitely right in saying just punch him, and you could see by the reactions, like the one guy who was saying punch him, when the knee landed, got all upset because he knew it was a DQ. And then the rest of the team, the rest of the corner all celebrated like it was over, like they didn't know what happened. So they obviously didn't know the rules, which I retweeted like a Stephen Wonderboy Thompson tweet, like you have to know going into the cage, you have to know all the rules as a champion. Like you just do. If you're the champ, you got to know the rules. Like if you're a UFC fighter, you should know the rules, but especially being a champion where a challenger could, whatever scenario presents itself, you know what to do because you're the champ. And it's so ridiculous, this narrative online of Sterling, acting, and he was, could take an interview and was fine the next day. we don't know how bad the concussion was. I mean, he was clearly concussed. He tried to stand him up and his legs were wobbly. Like, it was clearly like, how are you going to blame Sterling for an illegal knee on Petr Yan? And I know there was a lot of talk of, like Daniel said, maybe like a rule change after this. But if you didn't have disqualifications, what would stop champions from doing illegal stuff and then nothing would happen to them? You know what I mean? Like they could just throw 12-6 elbows from the top and then not get, if there was
retain the title.
And retain the title. Exactly. Like maybe it should have been a no contest, but I think the rules are there for a good reason.
Here's what I think should happen. I think in a situation like this, the title should just be vacated, and there should be a rematch or a match for the vacant title.
I agree with that. I think that should be the rule change. Like Sterling, clearly, if he was winning the fight 4-0, this happened.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you could argue like he deserves the belt.
He was on the scorecards. Even
in that scenario, one of the judges had it for Sterling all. Like, what did he have? Like 3-1. That was a little crazy too, right?
Yeah.
That was a ridiculous score. The judging all night was a little suspect. We'll get to the main event where I think the judging was ridiculous. But, like I agree with you. They should have vacated the title, and then the rematch determines the winner. I think that would have been the right thing to do.
And now Aljamain Sterling wants to fight Triple C. Like, what? No, this is the fight to make.
I think that's just like
mind games.
I think this is going to happen. Dana is going to want this to happen again. Yeah. And I think the rematch will go a lot of the same. And I think Sterling won't. I don't know how you feel. I don't think he'll be that crazy in the rematch. Like,
I don't think he'll try 20 takedowns.
No, that's the thing. I think he realized like that leg sweep from Yan was beauty.
Dude, it's art.
It's art where he would catch the leg and then sweep oh my God, it was so beautiful. Like he did it like 3 times. And then I saw this compilation of him, fighting in Russia doing it. And it's like, man, that is some beautiful form and like technique. And I just think it's going to be really tough for Sterling to, retain the title in the rematch.
This better be the main event of a pay-per-view.
Yeah, or a co-main on like a big fight, like even bigger fight,
Yeah, like right. Jones and Ngannou or something.
Yeah, like something like that.
Or Stiopic and it's Stiopic and Jones.
Yeah, I don't know.
All right. Where the judges were not needed. Amanda Nunes retains her 145 title against Meegan Anderson. So the guy I previewed this card with said Meegan Anderson would present a lot of problems to Amanda Nunes, and I strongly disagreed with him. And I turned out to be correct. This looked like a cakewalk for Amanda Nunes. Meegan Anderson landed 2 punches somehow. I don't know how. But Meegan Anderson shot for a takedown for some odd reason. And then Amanda Nunes, boom, triangle armbar over in 2 minutes. What were your thoughts, man?
Daniel thought Meegan Anderson presented trouble?
No. This guy, one of my MMA friends from the website I write with.
This looked a lot like the Ronda Rousey fight. You know what I mean? Where Ronda took like 100 shots and threw like 1 and just got destroyed. This was in the same ilk of fight. I mean, Meegan Anderson took like the first couple punches and was like, oh my God, the power. And then, I mean, we went into this fight saying how like, this is gonna be murder. And you and me were both spot on. Like this lasted 30 seconds. Like Nunes threw like 4 punches and then the third one rocked her. And then, like you said, like the reason she's shot him for the takedown was like, I can't take any more damage. Let me try to get her in the clinch. And then she's a black belt in jiu-jitsu on the ground. So like, if you look at the submission, bro, she had her in armbar and like a head, like she could
triangle choke.
She could have choked her 2 different ways. It was at her will. Like you said this after the fight. We really have to start discussing like GOAT, regardless of gender, with Amanda Nunes. Like she's one of the best fighters of all time. Like it's amazing. Who at 145 is going to challenge her? They said after the fight, there's literally nobody. At 135 with Shevchenko, makes sense. Like that's the biggest super fight. But in the 45 division, bro, like there's nobody. Yeah, Felicia. Who's
she fighting? Oh, she's fighting Danielle Wolf. That shows how shallow that division is.
Like, it's amazing. And it's like, oh, they're like, who should she retire? She's not going to retire. She's going to rule with an iron fist for 5 years, and nobody's going to come close to her. You know what I mean?
Dude.
She looks better than she looks better than when she was younger, which is amazing.
Well, the thing is, once she got her strength and conditioning in check,
Yeah,
it was over.
Yeah, it's over.
And then she has that mom strength now. It's like, what the hell?
Yeah, dude, the mom strength, that just like adds an extra, like, to the punching stats. It's just unbelievable.
When we look at these pound for pound rankings, Amanda Nunes should just be a whole nother row on the chart.
Yeah, it should be like Amanda Nunes and
Shevchenko.
Category. Yeah, like those. It should be Nunes in a separate category, and then everybody else.
Yeah. All right. So Meegan Anderson, this was the last fight under contract, but I'm sure she'll get re-signed. But 145 is so shallow that I don't know who she'd fight next.
A lot of people talk about people outside the UFC, like
Kayla Harrison. Let's give her Kayla Harrison.
And I think isn't Clarissa Shields of 145 or 2?
Yeah.
So like those two down the line, but that's not for years. You know what I mean? Like that's not for. They have to fight a year in PFL. And then if they both fight a year in PFL and do really well, they'll sign with the UFC. Then they have to fight some in the UFC before they could get to Nunes. So essentially, we have to wait 2 or 3 years for those people to get here. And in those 2 or 3 years, who in the 145? You know what I mean? Nobody. The only fight for Nunes that is big is the 135 Shevchenko fight. That's a super fight.
Yo, Amanda Nunes. I think there should be a serious conversation that she is the greatest fighter of all time.
I agree. And if you think that's like crazy or a stupid take, I would reevaluate, your fandom, because it's like watching a young Mike Tyson, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like it's like watching a 20-year-old Mike Tyson go out there, 40 seconds, fight's over. That's essentially what every Amanda Nunes fight is now. She goes out there, 30 seconds, done.
She's the greatest female combat sports athlete of all time, and there's no question. She is what people thought Ronda Rousey would be.
Yeah, and I mean, not even Rousey. Like everyone's like, oh, Chris Cyborg would be the one person that could challenge her. She dispatched of Chris Cyborg in like a minute.
I don't. And Shevchenko, I think she's right there with Nunes. We're right below. That's how good I think Shevchenko is, and I'm sure you would agree to some extent at least. But I mean,
the thing I worry about a Shevchenko Nunes fight, when Shevchenko fought, who'd she fight in her last fight? She lost a round to
Jennifer Maia. And
Jennifer Maia, a little bit bigger than Shevchenko, used her wrestling really well against her. And you just wonder if she fought Nunes again, would Nunes being like big for the 135 weight class, like would she just control her on the ground? And I think you would have to say she would.
Yeah, but Juliana, apparently Holly Holm dropped out, so Juliana Pena is going to get the freaking fight, but that's just going to be death in 30 seconds.
Yeah, I know.
Like, let's check who Juliana Pena's fought. Oh, so she beat McMahon. She lost to Durandamy, who Durandamy's not even a submission artist, and she lost by sub. And then she beat Nico Montano a little while ago, but like,
I mean, I guess Nunes could fight Durandamy, but they fought already, right? Or am I mistaken?
Yeah, they fought. Yeah, they did fight.
And like, I don't, you know what I mean? Like,
something's
going to change.
So I think, we have Shevchenko and Andrade coming up in April. Yeah, if Andrade wins that fight, screw it. I say give Andrade to Nunes. Why not?
Yeah, I agree. I think Shevchenko retains it.
Yeah, I think Shevchenko retains it, but if Andrade wins that, dude, Andrade is game to fight anybody. And like, why not? Screw it.
Yeah, I mean, why not? You're right though. It's like there's somebody out there training right now who's like young that will one day beat Amanda Nunes, maybe. But like, you know what I mean? Like there's nobody.
I don't see it.
There's nobody right now inside the UFC. Like there's always somebody out there, you know what I mean? Like there's always some prospect in 5 years that'll come and be great. But for now, it's domination.
Yeah, and I do agree. Meegan Anderson was probably the biggest threat in this division, and because of her length and power.
Yeah.
But Nunes, too easy.
Yeah, I think Meegan Anderson's got to go and fight some of the mid-tier in the rankings fighters,
Yeah.
Get some wins back on the board.
I say have Nunes fight sometime in May, have her dispatch Juliana Pena to shut her up, and then give her Andrade Shevchenko.
Yeah, we'll see.
All right. To the main event of the evening. Legendary Polish power, Jan Blachowicz, defeats Israel Adesanya by decision. Jan Blachowicz' game plan very much surprised me in this fight with how he stood and he kickboxed with Izzy for the first 3.5 rounds, and then he takes him down, and he wins the fight. Jan executed the perfect game plan that he needed to execute. What do you have to say?
Yeah, it was surprising how much he decided to kickbox and how well he did kickboxing, Everybody thought he would wrestle early. It was actually the opposite. He wrestled late, which eventually won him the fight. But going into the 4th and 5th, the championship rounds, I don't know how you had it. I think it was probably 2-1 Izzy. And then
I had it 2-1 Jan, but it could be either way, honestly.
It could be, but it was super close. You know what I mean? Like you could either score it either way. And then I think you would agree. Clearly, the 4th and 5th went to Jan.
Yeah.
Like the way his jab. Like I don't think he had Izzy, which is crazy. I don't know if he had an answer for Jan's jab. Jan's jab kept getting through, and it was quick.
Well, if you listen to the commentary, he just kept biting on the feints.
Yeah, I know that was a funny. People were upset with them. Some of that he was biting on some feints. They were right in some aspects, but they were also wrong in the fact that Jan was much closer than they were portraying. But like you said, also like Izzy was so effective in his last fight with Paulo Costa with the leg kicks. And I mean, for the most part, Jan ate a lot of them, and then he checked a good amount of them. Like their shins connected a few times, which was brutal to watch. But like Jan did a really good job checking those leg kicks, which never let Izzy set up the stuff up top. You know what I mean? Like that's how he beat Costa. He kept going to leg, and then he got up top. Jan either checking or just being the legendary Polish power. I'm for bowling like pork chops.
If I drop, it give me power.
It give me power. Love this guy. He's just never Izzy was in like the flow, the rhythm he always talks about, like in the first two. But then Jan's jab really threw him off. And then, like we saw in the later rounds, the 4th and 5th, those takedowns, the weight came into play. Like
speaking of the weight.
Yeah, you go ahead.
Speaking of the weight, sorry to cut you off, but you notice Israel Adesanya was leaning forward on that takedown in the third to do his defense, but Jan just pulled in and threw him to the ground. Mm-hmm. And I thought, like, this is where the weight comes in. And I respect Izzy's decision not to gain weight because, yes, he did have a somewhat clear speed advantage to me. Jan Blachowicz looked quick in that fight. I'll say that. But and then one thing I found about Blachowicz was, usually he rushes in and just tries to tear you apart. He didn't do that, but he would unleash a 3-4 piece combo ending with that body kick. And he'd just get right out. He landed some significant strikes, gained points on the scorecard. Beautiful game plan by Jan.
It was a really good game plan by Jan as well. I don't know if you recognize this, but like in the first 2 or 3 rounds, he went for like 2 takedowns in the first and the second, and Izzy stuffed him, but Jan just kept leaning up against him on the fence. And I think you could tell in those 30 to 45 seconds where Jan was leaning on him, it was starting to slowly like weigh on Izzy the weight. Like, I wonder if that's where the fatigue came in, those first couple of takedown attempts, because when the 4th and 5th happened and Jan took him down at will, like you could tell Izzy just did not have the strength or the energy to stop the takedown like he did in the first 2 rounds. And then, like you said, Jan probably weighed, 230 on fight night. And that weight really, that was the difference to me. Like when he was on top, he could not move Jan, and Jan had him in like almost like a full mount towards the fifth there. And Izzy, you were thinking maybe he would get like a submission attempt off, but Jan just kept him, down with his weight that Izzy couldn't even move on the bottom. I think that's really the part of Izzy's game that he has to evolve if he wants to, become a really, come even better.
Yeah, I think Izzy will be back. I think he could win the 205 belt when he doesn't want to cut the weight anymore. I think you and I could both agree on that. But what surprised me about Blachowicz was he outstruck Izzy from distance the whole fight.
Yeah, I mean, the one I think a lot had to do, I'll go back to it, I've harped on it a good bit here, is that jab with the middleweights just touches Izzy. You know what I mean? Like just a little bit. But like you saw some of those jabs that hit Izzy were like knocking his head back, like the legendary Polish power.
Polish power.
The jab was just like snapping Izzy's neck back a few times, and Jan never landed clean. I think going into this fight, you said if Jan lands clean, he would knock Izzy out. And after watching the fight, I think we would have to like agree with that, because just, you know what I mean? Like the jab was so powerful, and even Izzy talked about after the fight how like the thud of his punches when he would hit Izzy. But this was a really interesting matchup, like you said, the speed versus power, and the bigger animal won.
And I think when we talk about Blachowicz, he usually like throws a power hook. He never really threw a strong hook in this fight. And I think that was part of his strategy, because if to throw that hook, he'd have to get inside the pocket
and expose himself. Yeah.
Yeah. And just that jab, bop, 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 beautifully executed. I don't think Jan could have fought this fight any better.
No, I mean, this was the only way for him to like win the fight is like you said, not play into Izzy's strengths and then use his weight and wrestling, which were obviously better than Izzy's, to win the fight, and he didn't. This is a super impressive performance for a guy that was 2-4 in the UFC. Looked to get cut. Now he's won 9 out of his last 10 fights. Won the belt. Now defended it. So he's the undisputed champ. And you gotta love the guy, Polish power.
We'll talk about his resurgence, but I even said this when we talked about this off camera, off recording. When Izzy got into that matrix mode, I said Jan's just gonna double leg him, and you said you made a good point. What if he can't catch him? Well, that was his chance to catch him, and then he took advantage, double leg, boom.
I think the weight really made Izzy fatigue going into the championship rounds, mm-hmm. And like you said, he could catch him because I think Izzy was so tired. And I think a lot of the things with Izzy too is like he was throwing a lot of strikes, and for the most part, Jan with the great chin, like it didn't seem to be affecting Jan that much. And I think that in weighing in, like the longer the fight went on, it was Izzy was getting a little frustrated. Like, the middleweights might be dropping with some of these shots, but these light heavyweights, different breed.
Yeah, Jan's a different breed. All right, so we know it's next for Blachowicz in September. I think Blachowicz said, "Give me minimum 6 months, and then we'll go."
6 months. Spend time with my family in Poland.
I would bring my axe out to the woods and chop down some trees. All right, so we know he's gonna fight Glover. I'm just curious, Glover, at that age, 10 months is a lot of time off.
It is, but it's probably not terrible for Glover considering he took a lot of punishment in the Santos fight,
That's true. So when we talk about Adesanya,
he's got to go back to. He's not gonna fight it.
He's going back to middleweight. He'll be back in 2-3 years, I think. So
no,
Whitaker and Costa.
He'll be back later this year, I think, end of the year.
Yeah, Whitaker and Costa
are
fighting, but
I have a feeling. I think Whitaker takes that one personally.
Yeah, I think Whitaker does, but I don't think he fights Izzy because Dana White's could be like.
I think I see where you're going with that, but I think that's like the only logical fight to make.
Yeah, but if Darren Till gets a great win over Marvin Vittori, I think we could see that fight happen because I think Israel Adesanya really wants to fight Darren Till, and I think that's be a really great box office breaker. What do you have to say?
Yeah, I agree. I think there's two matchups for Izzy. It's Whittaker Costa winner, which I think it'll be Whittaker, and then either Till or Vittori winner, which is really close. And I think the winner of Till Vittori probably fights like a cannoneer for a number one contender spot after Izzy fights, Whittaker, in my opinion.
Yeah,
But
unless Till beats the brakes off Vittori, and I think he
I
gets
don't
the
see that
title shot.
happening though, because I think
Oh, I
Vittori.
don't either.
I think Vittori is so good. I think he's the dark horse of this division. I think he could win the title one day. That's how good I think Vittori
Yeah,
is.
I agree.
And I think Vittori, looking at Jan Blachowicz' game plan, like looked
He likes it.
and saw the wrestling and how not great Izzy was on the bottom. And I think Vittori is licking his chops to get another title shot because Izzy only beat Vittori with a split decision in their first fight back in the day before Izzy was champ. And I think Vittori, like, I really think he's the dark horse of this division.
Yeah, I agree. But you have Darren Till on the other hand.
I know I can't root against Darren Till though. He's the boy.
I spent 3 years in Brazil. I really learned how to not get on the ground. So I don't like being on the ground. But dude, that's a fight I want to see. The two best trolls in the UFC. Although John Jones is taking the cake as of recent.
As of recent, probably, yeah. And then we just have to. The Izzy Jones fight will never happen now, but it would have played out very similar to how Blachowicz Izzy played out, except it probably would have been worse. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like John Jones, just judo throwing him to the ground, doing some dumps.
Yeah, exactly. Like it would have been like a ragdolling of Izzy, I think.
Yeah.
It would be really interesting. It would be really interesting to just go back to Jan for a minute. It would be interesting if Jones fought at heavyweight for a while, and then like if Blachowicz retained against Glover, maybe down the line we could see Jones Blachowicz at 205 maybe in the future in a couple of years. That would be interesting.
Yeah. But I don't see John Jones letting Blachowicz get close. Just, kicks to the oblique, kicks to the knees. And so, but Darren Till, we're rooting for him. Dude, he's going to be the fight on ABC. This is perfect. It
is perfect. If he does win, it would be hard to say he wouldn't be the number one contender, or at least get a number one contender shot.
And if you think about it, like, this is the perfect time to market Darren Till to the masses. I think he's
I just hope by the time Till fights for the belt, if he does fight for the belt, that people are allowed back in stadiums and stuff.
Bring it to Liverpool or something.
Seeing Darren Till fight Izzy in the packed Liverpool stadium would be unbelievable.
Or we can wait till Mike Perry makes his insurgence to the middleweight division, and then we can get the title fight that way.
Yeah.
Mike Patty. Raw dog. All right. We talked a lot, man. Dude, it's an exciting time. Dang, there's something I saw today. Okay, likability. Nunes and Jan Blachowicz are the two most likable champions in the UFC, and you can't tell me otherwise.
I would agree with that. They're up there. That's a good one. I think if Dustin Poirier was the 155er, he'd be probably up there as most likable.
He should be.
He really should be. But that's a good shout.
And then, you know what I've noticed? I have a lot less hot takes when it comes to MMA than the rest of my sports.
Well, I mean, just to let the listeners behind the curtain here, there is a time in the past where Jacob said if you give him 8 months of training with Floyd Mayweather Sr., that he could fight Conor McGregor for 2 rounds. So there is that hot take.
But other than that, I've been
Other
pretty,
than that, you've been pretty good. That's the one little slip up.
it's a pretty bad slip up, I gotta say. I respect Izzy a lot more how he took this loss. I wasn't a big fan of Izzy, but the way he took the loss, I like him now. I genuinely like him now.
I've always liked him, and I mean, he said it. He's lost in boxing, lost in kickboxing, lost in life. He's like, you can't win them all, and it's really true. In the fighting game, it's very rare to win them all. There's like you can count on one hand how many times guys have won it all.
Yeah. John Jones. Oh, Khabib.
Yeah, like
dude, Dana White should just let it go, man.
He should just let it go. Yeah.
Like, give the title to Dustin, and it's all good.
Yeah, exactly.
What was I gonna say? I saw something today that I wanted to bring up, but I can't think of it. Well, you sent some tweet in the group chat today. It's been rough for Uncle Dana.
Oh, it has been, bro. Khabib retired, his number one guy. Adesanya lost, Conor McGregor got knocked out, and Hamza retired / unretired in a span of 2 months. Rough time for Uncle Dana. And I saw these people saying, like, if Stipe beats Ngannou, Uncle Dana's going to have a fit.
Yeah.
They want the UFC wants Ngannou to win to prove, they want to make him the next.
They wanted Adesanya to win, but
didn't happen, man.
But I'm so glad Jan is getting the publicity and the respect that he deserves.
I love it.
The legendary Polish power, but the Polish patience prevailed in this fight. I waited, I got turned, and I won the fight. I prevailed.
I bring the belt back to Poland. Bring it, share it with the Polish people. This is their belt as much as mine.
I love that guy. All right, you got anything else?
I got nothing. It's good. Good episode.
Good episode, guys. We'll see you for the preview of Fight Night. Leon Edwards versus Bilal Muhammad.